The examination room door clicked shut behind Dr. Richard Morrison's trembling figure, leaving only the mechanical hum of fluorescent lights and Sarah Carter's muffled sob. Michael Carter sat motionless on the paper-covered table, the massive growth consuming half his scalp, pulsating with each heartbeat. An angry, dark red mass the size of a grapefruit that had erupted from nothing in just 5 days. "Doctor, please." Sarah's desperate voice echoed down the sterile hallway, but Morrison kept walking, his white coat disappearing around the corner. 25 years of medical experience, thousands of patients, head and neck tumors, advanced cancers, grotesque disfigurements. He'd seen everything. Until today, until he'd pulled up Michael's CT scan and seen what lay beneath that horrifying lump. Something that made his hand shake so violently he'd dropped his pen, something that turned his face chalk white. Sarah returned to the exam room, mascara streaking her cheeks. Her husband of 46 years sat there, accepting and quiet, as if he'd known this moment would come, as if he'd been waiting 48 years for his body to betray his darkest secret. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Nashville, Tennessee had been home to Michael Carter for 48 years. His auto repair shop on Charlotte Avenue bore his name in faded letters, the paint peeling like old skin. Inside, the familiar scent of motor oil mingled with burnt coffee from a pot that never quite emptied. A transistor radio played Merle Haggard, while autumn sunlight filtered through windows thick with road dust. At 68, Michael's hands remained steady despite the tremor that occasionally seized them when helicopters flew overhead. Customers trusted those hands. Weathered, oil-stained, capable of coaxing life from dying engines. On the wall behind his desk hung an American flag, a photo of him with the mayor, several shots of satisfied customers standing beside their resurrected vehicles. One photograph lay face down. It had been that way for years. Sarah had learned not to ask about it. Their modest 2-story home in East Nashville held 46 years of marriage in its walls. The kitchen table bore the scars of family dinners, homework sessions, and quiet morning rituals. Every Sunday for 4 decades, Sarah had ironed Michael's blue button-down shirt while cornbread baked in the oven. She'd chosen that particular shade of blue without knowing why it felt right. It matched something in her husband's past she'd never quite seen. Sarah Carter had been a nurse for 30 years before retiring. Her intuition for illness was sharp, honed by decades of reading bodies and silences. She'd watched Michael startle at loud noises, seen him wake, gasping from nightmares he'd never describe, noticed how he flinched when she touched the scar on the back of his head. "Car accident, 1970, he'd always said. She'd learned not to press. Their daughter Emily had inherited her father's height and her mother's sharp eyes. At 42, she was a trauma surgeon at Vanderbilt Medical Center, skilled, respected, and carrying her own wounds. She hadn't spoken to her father in 5 years, not since her residency when she'd discovered discrepancies in his medical records. The scar he'd attributed to a car accident showed entrance and exit patterns inconsistent with automotive trauma. She'd asked him directly. He'd shut down completely. The silence between them had calcified into something harder than bone. In Michael's bedroom, locked in the bottom drawer of his nightstand, sat a rusted metal box. Sarah had seen it once, years ago, noticed the faint Vietnamese characters etched into the lid. Inside were items Michael touched on sleepless nights. Dog tags, a yellowed letter, a small journal. 47 names written in fading ink. And in the bathroom mirror each morning, Michael saw the truth staring back, the scar where something had entered his skull and changed everything. The Sunday morning routine had remained unchanged for decades. Sarah stood at the ironing board in the kitchen, steam rising as she pressed crisp lines into Michael's blue shirt. The scent of cornbread filled the air, mingling with coffee. Sam Cooke's "You Send Me" drifted from the radio. Their song, from a church dance in 1973, when everything still felt possible. In the bathroom, Michael ran his hand over his scalp, fingers instinctively finding the old scar. Something felt different. A small bump, no larger than a pea, raised beneath his fingertips. The tissue felt warm, slightly tender. He pressed gently, wincing. Probably nothing. An ingrown hair, a pimple. At 68, the body developed its peculiarities. He dismissed it. At breakfast, Sarah noticed him touching his head repeatedly. Her nurse's instinct activated, that subtle shift from wife to medical professional that had never fully left her, even 5 years into retirement. "Let me see. It's nothing. Michael?" Her tone left no room for argument. She felt the bump carefully, her fingertips reading what her eyes couldn't see. Small, yes, but the texture was wrong. Hard. Fixed to the underlying tissue. Warmer than the surrounding skin. Her internal alarm system, calibrated by 30 years in emergency rooms, began its quiet warning. "We should watch this," she said, keeping her voice neutral. By Monday evening, the bump had grown to marble size. Michael wore his cap to the garage, pulling it low. The dull throb at the base of his skull made it hard to focus on the Chevy transmission in front of him. Colors were changing too, from pink to an angry red. Tuesday brought a golf ball-sized mass. Sarah measured it with a tape measure, noting the centimeter-per-day growth rate in a small notebook. She took his temperature, 99.8 degrees, low-grade fever. She felt the edges, irregular, immobile. "We're calling Dr. Peterson tomorrow," she said. "It'll go down." But his coffee cup sat half-finished on the workbench. His hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly on the drive home. Customers had started noticing. "You okay, Mike?" Old Tom Bradshaw had asked that afternoon. Michael had only nodded, unable to form words around the growing dread. Wednesday night, Sarah heard him gasp in the shower. She found him standing frozen, water streaming over his shoulders, staring at his reflection. The lump had exploded to tennis ball size. The color had deepened to an alarming purple-black at its center, the surface beginning to look textured, almost rough. Most disturbing was the way it pulsated visibly with each heartbeat, a grotesque second pulse on his skull. Thursday morning revealed the true horror. The mass now covered a quarter of his scalp, the size of a small orange, deep red-black like old blood trapped beneath skin, its surface raised and warm to the touch. The swelling had begun spreading downward toward his ear. Pain radiated down Michael's neck in waves. New symptoms emerged, dizzy spells, nausea that came without warning. He tried to go to work, lasted 40 minutes. A young boy, maybe 7, had pointed and asked his mother, "What's wrong with that man's head?" Michael came home at 10 in the morning, the first time in 40 years he'd closed the shop early. He sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands, that old, familiar weight pressing down on him. The weight he'd carried since 1971. His hand reached for the nightstand drawer, almost opened it, almost touched the metal box. Stopped. Not now. Not after all this time. "We're going to the doctor," Sarah said quietly. "Now." His hand shook as he reached for the phone. Sarah noticed his eyes drift toward the bedroom, toward that locked drawer where secrets festered. "After all, what time?" she asked. "Nothing. I'm just scared." But she knew her husband. This wasn't ordinary fear. This was the fear of something specific, something he'd been running from for longer than their marriage. Dr. James Peterson had been Michael's physician for 20 years, jovial, reassuring, the kind of doctor who remembered grandchildren's names. But when Michael removed his cap in the examination room Friday afternoon, Peterson's professional mask slipped. How long? His voice had changed. 5 days. 5 days? This grew in 5 days? Peterson's hands were gentle, but his face betrayed alarm. He photographed the mass from multiple angles, ordered immediate CT and MRI scans, drew vials of blood. "I need to see what's happening inside," he said. In the parking lot afterward, waiting for the imaging appointments, Sarah held Michael's hand. His skin felt cold despite the autumn warmth. That night, Michael had the nightmare again. But this time, Sarah heard him scream words she'd never heard from his lips. Foreign words, Vietnamese syllables that fell like broken glass. "Xin lỗi," he sobbed in his sleep. "Sorry." "Kong." "No." And one phrase in English that made Sarah's blood run cold. "I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill them." The CT and MRI results arrived on Monday morning. Dr. Peterson's voice over the phone carried an unfamiliar tremor. "I'm referring you to Dr. Richard Morrison, head and neck specialist at Vanderbilt. Today." Sarah gripped the phone tighter. "How bad is it, James?" The pause stretched too long. "Just go see him. Today." Vanderbilt Medical Center rose against the Nashville skyline like a monument to modern medicine. Inside its walls, Sarah's daughter Emily performed surgeries, saved lives, moved through sterile corridors with the confidence of someone who understood the body's secrets. Sarah had almost called her. Almost. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and anxiety. Michael kept his cap pulled low, but other patients stared anyway. The mass had grown overnight, now barely contained beneath the fabric. Whispers followed them. A mother pulled her child closer. Michael studied the floor tiles as if they held answers. Sarah's grip on his hand threatened to cut off circulation. Dr. Richard Morrison entered with the confident stride of a man who'd seen everything, 25 years of head and neck oncology, published researcher, sought-after specialist. His credentials lined the wall behind his desk. Degrees, certifications, professional accolades. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he said, his voice professionally warm. Michael removed his cap. Morrison's expression remained controlled, trained. "Significant growth. When did symptoms begin?" 5 days ago." Something flickered across Morrison's face. 5 days? You're certain?" "We're certain." Morrison pulled up the CT scan on his large monitor. Cross-sections of Michael's skull appeared in shades of gray. Brain matter, bone, soft tissue. He scrolled through images methodically, his commentary ceasing as he reached a particular frame. He froze. Sarah leaned forward. "What do you see?" Morrison didn't answer. He zoomed in on a dense, white object partially embedded at the base of Michael's skull, surrounded by tissue that had formed over decades. Recently disturbed, recently inflamed, he measured it, cross-referenced with another image. His breathing changed, faster, shallower. Morrison had served as an Army medical officer from 1975 to 1980. He'd treated combat injuries, extracted shrapnel, seen what bullets did to human bodies. The shape on the screen was unmistakable. His pen clattered onto the desk. He reached for his water glass, knocked it over instead. Water spread across papers, dripping onto the floor. No one moved to stop it. Morrison stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward and hitting the wall. "Doctor?" Sarah's voice carried genuine fear now. Morrison backed toward the door. His hand found the knob. Michael watched him with an expression Sarah had never seen on her husband's face. Recognition, acceptance, as if he'd known this moment would eventually arrive. I'm sorry." Morrison's voice had lost all professional distance. I can't. I can't take this case." Sarah stood. "What? Why? What did you see? This isn't— I've never— You need a specialist, not me." Morrison's hand shook on the doorknob. Michael spoke quietly. "You saw it." Their eyes met. Something passed between them, understanding shared by men who'd witnessed war. "I saw enough," Morrison whispered. He walked out. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like thunder. Sarah chased him into the corridor. "Please, you have to help us. He's dying." Morrison stopped, turned. His eyes were wet. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. I truly am. But what's in your husband's head? It's beyond my expertise." He paused. "And my courage." He walked away, white coat disappearing around the corner. Sarah returned to find Michael sitting exactly as she'd left him, too calm. Resignation settled over him like a shroud. What did he see? "Michael, what's in your head?" "I think you know." "The car accident?" Michael shook his head slowly. "Vietnam?" He closed his eyes, nodded once. "All these years." Sarah's voice cracked. "We'll talk about this later," she said, forcing strength into her voice. "Right now, we need to save your life." 3 floors down, in the hospital cafeteria, Emily Carter sat with her surgical team. A colleague dropped into the chair beside her. "Morrison just refused a case. First time ever." Emily looked up from her coffee. "What kind of case?" "Elderly man. Massive head mass. Some kind of foreign object embedded in his skull. Morrison looked like he'd seen a ghost." Emily's blood ran cold. "Elderly man? Here today?" Her colleague described the patient. Tall, late 60s, growth on left side of head, wife with silver hair, looked like a retired nurse. Emily was running before she realized she'd moved. Through corridors, upstairs, into Morrison's office without knocking. "Show me the scans." "Emily, I can't. He's my father. Show me." Morrison's resistance crumbled. He pulled up the images. Emily saw what Morrison had seen: the dense metallic object, the decades-old tissue response, the recent inflammation. Her medical training analyzed the images even as her hands began to shake. All those years of distance, because he'd lied. And here was the proof of what he'd lied about. She found them in the parking lot, about to leave. Ran to their car, banged on the window. "Emily!" Sarah's face showed shock and relief. Emily looked at her father. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "I saw the scans." "Emily," Sarah began. "All this time, you lied about everything." Michael's voice was barely audible. "Not everything. We don't have time for this. You'll be dead in a week, maybe less." Sarah grabbed her daughter's arm. "Can you help?" "Not me, but I know someone. Dr. Elena Rodriguez at Johns Hopkins. Best neurosurgeon in the country for trauma cases." "Trauma cases?" Michael's voice cracked. "War injuries, retained foreign objects, bullets." Emily's professional mask slipped. "She's probably the only person who won't run." "How soon?" "I'll call her now." Emily's hand was already on her phone. "But Dad?" Michael finally looked at her. "After this is over, you and I are going to talk. About everything." Dawn broke over Nashville as Sarah packed their bags. Her movements were methodical, honed by decades of preparing for emergencies. Michael's medications, changes of clothes, their wedding photo. Emily's baby picture, the one where Michael held her in the hospital, face full of wonder and terror at this new responsibility, and the metal box. Sarah slipped it into her bag while Michael slept fitfully on the couch. He'd never noticed she knew where he kept the key. By 7, Emily's car was heading east on Interstate 40. She drove with surgical precision, fast but controlled, her hands steady on the wheel even as her mind raced. Sarah sat in back with Michael, monitoring his breathing, his color, the grotesque mass that now consumed half his scalp. Michael drifted in and out of consciousness. His fever had climbed to 101 degrees. When he spoke, the words came fragmented, disconnected. "Lieutenant Stevens, don't make me—" "The children." Emily's eyes found her mother's in the rearview mirror. Sarah shook her head. "Not yet. Let him rest." The first hour passed in silence. Tennessee mountains gave way to Virginia hills. Emily pushed the speed limit, her mind calculating time versus deterioration. She'd seen infections like this during her residency, knew how quickly they could turn septic. At a rest stop near the Tennessee-Virginia border, Michael needed help walking. His legs trembled. Sarah guided him toward the restroom while Emily waited outside, phone pressed to her ear, coordinating with Johns Hopkins. Inside the bathroom, Michael vomited. Sarah held him steady, wiping his face with damp paper towels. His skin felt like parchment, thin and fragile. "Sarah," his voice was barely a whisper, "if I don't make it, don't. Listen." He gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "The box, in your bag. After, read what's inside." Sarah's breath caught. "You knew I took it." "I always knew you'd find it someday. I just hoped—" He swallowed hard. "I'd be brave enough to tell you first." "Tell me now." "I'm too tired and too ashamed." Emily stood just outside the door, listening. Hearing her father admit shame did something to the anger she'd carried for 5 years. Softened it, not erased it, but made it more complicated, more human. Back in the car, Michael's breathing grew labored, wet. Sarah kept her hand on his pulse point, counting. Emily's speedometer crept toward 80. The radio stayed off. She couldn't handle the distraction. Her phone rang repeatedly. Johns Hopkins coordinators, surgical scheduling, insurance verification. She answered each call with clipped efficiency, never taking her eyes off the road. They arrived at Johns Hopkins Hospital at 11 that night. Emergency entrance, wheelchair waiting, doctor. Rodriguez's team ready despite the late hour. Michael was admitted immediately to the surgical assessment unit. The room smelled of bleach and fear. Monitors beeped their steady reassurance. IV fluids began flowing into Michael's dehydrated veins. Antibiotics, pain medication. He was too sick for a full examination tonight. Tomorrow would bring tests, decisions, the knife. Sarah refused to leave. Emily, using her credentials as visiting medical staff, secured a call room nearby. But neither of them slept. At midnight, alone in the hospital room with her unconscious husband, Sarah finally opened the metal box. The rusted lid resisted, then gave way with a soft groan. Inside, time had been preserved in objects and paper. Dog tags on a beaded chain. Carter, Michael J. 26852-7794. APOS. Catholic. A letter, sealed in yellowed envelope covered in Vietnamese script. A small field notebook, military issue, its pages brittle. A black and white photograph, a Vietnamese family standing in front of a simple house, children smiling despite everything. A newspaper clipping from 1971, brief mention of an incident near Quang Tri. A Purple Heart medal, unofficial, never registered. And a list, 47 names written in Michael's careful handwriting. Sarah opened the field notebook. Michael's younger handwriting filled the pages. March 1971. Lt. Stevens ordered strike on village. Intel says VC hideout. But I've been there. It's families, children playing in the dirt, old women farming. March 15, 1971. Platoon moving tomorrow. I can't do it. I won't kill children. March 16, 1971. I said no. Stevens called me traitor, coward, raised his weapon at me. March 16, 1971, later entry. He shot me, my own officer, from behind, left me to die in the elephant grass. Villagers found me, carrying me to safety, saving my life. March-April 1971. Dr. Lin and his family hiding me in bunker. Removed bullet, but peace remains, too deep, will stay forever. He says, better to carry metal than carry souls of innocent. May 1971. Getting me to evac point. Lin says, you saved us, we save you. This is balance. June 1971. Back in world, but not really. Changed my story. Car accident, they believed. Can't tell truth. Court-martial. Dishonorable discharge. Prison, maybe worse. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, spotting the old pages. 46 years she'd loved this man. 46 years he'd carried this alone. She felt anger. Yes, anger that he'd lied. But overwhelming understanding of why. The system would have destroyed him for being decent, for refusing to murder. Her husband wasn't a coward. He was a hero punished for heroism. Emily found her at 3 in the morning, still reading. Sarah showed her the journal without words. Emily read standing up, unable to sit, her surgeon's hands shaking. All these years she'd thought he'd lied out of weakness, out of something shameful. He'd lied to survive a system that would have crushed him for conscience. "Oh, Dad," Emily whispered to the sleeping figure in the bed. "What did they do to you?" Dr. Elena Rodriguez arrived at 7 sharp. She was 48, compact and efficient, with dark eyes that missed nothing. She'd been born in the United States, but her features spoke of Vietnamese heritage. Her father had been a refugee in 1975. She entered Michael's room with the calm confidence of someone who'd faced worse. The grotesque mass on his head didn't make her flinch, didn't make her back away. "Mr. Carter, I'm Dr. Rodriguez. I'm going to help you." Michael's eyes opened slightly. "You're not afraid?" "I've seen worse, and I've taken out bullets before." She reviewed the scans on her tablet while examining Michael directly. Her hands were gentle but thorough. When she touched the mass, Michael winced, but she didn't pull away. "This is a bullet fragment, M16 round from the characteristics. You were shot." Sarah gasped, despite knowing. Hearing it stated so clinically made it real. "You didn't know?" Rodriguez asked. "I just found out. Last night." Rodriguez examined the wound, the surrounding inflammation, the fever patterns. "When were you shot, Mr. Carter?" 1971, March, Vietnam." Rodriguez's hands stilled. "Where in Vietnam?" "Quang Tri Province. Small village near the DMZ. Why?" Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "My father was from Quang Tri." The words hung in the air. Coincidence? Maybe. But Rodriguez's face suggested something more. She pulled up a 3D reconstruction of the scan on her tablet. "The fragment is embedded near your brainstem. Your body encapsulated it in scar tissue for 48 years. A remarkable biological response, actually. Your immune system essentially built a prison around the foreign object." "Why is it causing problems now?" Sarah asked. The fragment shifted, microscopic movement, probably no more than a millimeter or two. But enough. It's now causing inflammation, infection, and pressure on critical neural structures. The infection is what's creating this external mass, your body trying to wall off and expel the contamination. "Can you remove it?" Rodriguez met her eyes. "It's going to be the most delicate surgery of my career. The fragment is touching the vertebral artery. One wrong move and he'll have a massive stroke. But yes, I can try." "What are his chances?" Emily's voice was steady, but her hands gripped the bed rail. 60% he survives surgery with full function. 30% he survives with deficits, speech, movement, memory. 10% he doesn't survive. Rodriguez paused. If I don't operate, he has 0% chance of surviving the week. Michael opened his eyes fully. Do it. Michael, Sarah began. I've been dying for 48 years, Sarah. Dying inside. Maybe it's time to cut that part out. Literally. Emily stepped forward. When? Tomorrow morning. Dawn. We prep today. That afternoon, Michael was sedated for pain management. He mumbled in sleep, names falling from his lips like prayers or curses. Lynn, Mai, Stevens, the children. Emily sat with her laptop, researching Quang Tri, March 1971. She found sanitized military reports, found a village named Than Hoa, an incident reported as confusion during reconnaissance, found records of 47 civilians who survived, relocated to refugee camps, found mention of one family who helped American soldiers to safety. Her hands shook as she scrolled. Sarah watched her daughter piece together the truth. Evening came. Rodriguez returned for rounds, but this time she sat down, pulled out her phone. I've been thinking about what Mr. Carter said. She showed them a photo. An elderly Vietnamese man in a white doctor's coat, stethoscope around his neck, smile lines around his eyes. This was my father, Dr. Nguyen Thanh Linh. Was? Sarah asked gently. He passed 5 years ago. Cancer. But before he died, he told me stories. Rodriguez scrolled through more photos. About American soldiers, specifically about one who refused to follow orders, who saved his village. The room went silent except for the monitor's steady beep. He never knew the soldier's name, but he described him. Tall, red hair, scar on his right hand. Rodriguez looked at Michael's hand resting on the blanket. Visible even in sleep, a distinctive scar from thumb to wrist, old burned tissue. May I see his hand? Sarah lifted it carefully. The scar caught the fluorescent light. Rodriguez's eyes filled with tears. My father drew this scar, over and over in his journals. Said it was the hand that pushed him and his family into the shelter, the hand that saved them when the American platoon was ordered to fire on the village. Sarah remembered the sealed letter. Doctor, could you read something for me? She retrieved the yellowed envelope from the metal box. Rodriguez opened it with reverent care. Read silently first, tears falling. Then aloud, translating from Vietnamese. To the American soldier with the scarred hand, you chose conscience over duty. You saved 47 souls that day, including my son, who was 8 years old. Lieutenant Stevens shot you, left you for dead. But you are not dead. You are more alive than those who follow evil orders without question. Do not carry shame. You did what was right. The children of Than Hoa village will tell their children about you. We are alive because you were brave. Come back someday. We will welcome you as family. Dr. Nguyen Thanh Linh, Mein Tin Tin Baby Hai. Rodriguez's voice broke on the last words. My father saved you, operated on you in a bomb shelter by candlelight, took the bullet fragment out. Not all of it, Sarah whispered. He didn't have proper tools, probably a pocket knife, maybe a bayonet, but he saved your life the best he could. Emily spoke for the first time. And now you're going to finish what your father started. Rodriguez nodded. It's more than that. You're the reason my family is alive. My father, me, my 2 children who wouldn't exist otherwise. Michael stirred, consciousness rising briefly. Lynn, little Lynn, who drew pictures? Rodriguez leaned close. I'm his daughter. Elena, I wasn't born yet when you saved them, but my mother was pregnant. You saved me before I was even born. Michael's tears came then, 48 years of them. You were the baby. In the photograph, your mother holding you. You saved us. Now I'll save you. The hospital woke Michael at 4 in the morning. Pre-surgery protocol demanded precision, medications to reduce swelling, antibiotics flooding his system one final time, consent forms signed with shaking hands. Sarah and Emily were already there, having never truly slept. The hospital had bent the rules, allowing them both to stay until the last possible moment. Michael was surprisingly calm. The sedatives helped, but there was something else, a peace that comes from finally facing what you've been running from for nearly 5 decades. I've been waiting 48 years for this, he said, voice thick from the medications. Sarah gripped his hand. For surgery? For truth. For this to be over. Emily stood on his other side, her surgical training warring with her daughter's heart. She knew the statistics, knew what could go wrong, knew that 60% survival meant 40% didn't make it. Dad, I need you to know, her voice cracked. I'm proud of you. Every single day. I'm sorry I didn't understand. Michael squeezed her hand. You kept me honest, even when I didn't want to be. That's what good children do. To Sarah, he said, 46 years wasn't enough. I want 46 more. She kissed him, tasting salt from tears she didn't remember crying. Then fight for them. I'll be waiting. The transport team arrived. The gurney began rolling. Sarah and Emily walked alongside, hands gripping the metal rails until the surgical suite doors loomed ahead, stainless steel barriers between life and death. I love you, Sarah said. I love you, Dad, Emily echoed. I love you both, Michael whispered. Then the doors swung open and he disappeared into the fluorescent brightness beyond. Sarah's legs gave out. Emily caught her mother. They sank to the floor together in the hallway, holding each other while hospital staff stepped around them with practiced discretion. This scene played out here every day. The waiting, the terror, and the helplessness of love. Inside Operating Room 3, the team assembled with choreographed efficiency. Dr. Rodriguez had operated with some of these people for years. Dr. Marcus Webb, her assisting neurosurgeon, knew her techniques intimately. Dr. Jennifer Kim, anesthesiologist, had kept patients alive through worse. 2 surgical nurses, a neurological monitoring specialist, equipment that cost more than houses. Rodriguez touched the rosary in her pocket, her father's, carried from Vietnam 50 years ago. She looked at the photo in her locker before scrubbing, her father holding her as an infant, his face full of the fierce love that survives war. This wasn't just another surgery. This was karma. This was completion. This was the circle closing after 48 years. She couldn't fail. At 5 o'clock precisely, the first incision was made. The scalp peeled back along the old scar line, revealing bone that hadn't seen light since 1971. The bone flap was removed with a surgical saw, each millimeter measured. The dura, the brain's protective covering, was opened with microscopic care. Below it, Michael Carter's brain, gray matter that held memories of war, love, lies, and truth. Approaching the target area, Rodriguez said quietly. Her voice was steady, her hands steadier. Hour 3 brought the first glimpse of what they'd come for. Surrounded by decades of scar tissue, inflamed and angry, was the fragment. Smaller than a thumbnail, but jagged, rusty, deadly. It had shifted recently, pressing against the vertebral artery, the vessel that feeds the brainstem. We need to drain the infection first, Rodriguez said. Webb handed her the aspiration device. Slowly, carefully, pus was removed. The fragment became visible, and it was touching the artery. Directly. A millimeter of contact that meant the difference between life and death. Webb saw it too. "Elena?" "I know." Kim's voice from the head of the table. "Blood pressure stable, heart rate 72. He's doing well." But doing well could change in a heartbeat. Rodriguez closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Breathed, opened them. "We go micromillimeter by micromillimeter. Webb, I'll need you to be ready with clips and sutures the moment I say, 'Ready.'" The surgical microscope was adjusted to maximum magnification. At this level, individual blood vessels looked like rivers. The fragment appeared massive, a rusty island in a sea of tissue. Rodriguez began separating the scar tissue from the metal, vessel by vessel, cauterizing each tiny bleeder as she went. Her back ached. She ignored it. Sweat formed on her forehead. The nurse dabbed it away without being asked. The monitor's beeping was hypnotic, steady, the sound of life continuing. 1 hour passed. 2. The fragment slowly became mobile, separating from the tissue that had imprisoned it. "Almost there," Rodriguez whispered. In the waiting room, Sarah and Emily had been joined by other families. A man whose wife was having a brain tumor removed, a woman whose son had been in a motorcycle accident. No one spoke. The silence of shared terror required no words. Emily had explained the procedure to her mother in clinical terms, trying to make the unimaginable comprehensible. But Sarah wasn't hearing medical terminology. She was hearing, "Your husband might die. Your husband might live, but never be himself again. Your husband might wake up not knowing who you are." The coffee in their cups had gone cold hours ago. Neither had taken a sip. At hour 5, a surgical coordinator appeared. "Mrs. Carter." Sarah stood on legs that had forgotten how to feel. "Dr. Rodriguez wanted you to know they've reached the fragment. Now comes the most delicate part, but she's the best. Have faith." After she left, Emily put her arm around her mother. "She really is the best, Mom. If anyone can do this, it's her." Emily didn't say what she was thinking. "I've seen brain surgeries go wrong. I've seen families told there's nothing more we can do. I've pronounced people dead on tables just like that one." Hour 8. Rodriguez was ready. The fragment was mobile. Everything surrounding it had been carefully dissected free. Now came the extraction. "Webb, be ready?" "Ready. Beginning extraction." She gripped the fragment with microforceps, lifted gently. It moved. 1 millimeter, 2, 3, then blood, sudden, fast, pooling in the surgical field. "Artery!" Webb's voice was sharp. Kim's alarm. Blood pressure dropping. 100/60, 90/50. "Suction," Rodriguez commanded. Blood was removed, but more came. Too fast. She couldn't see. Was operating by feel now, by instinct, by the 15,000 hours she'd spent in rooms like this. "Temporary clip, now!" Webb placed it in her hand. She found the artery blind, feeling for the pulse of blood, clamped it. The bleeding stopped. But now the brain wasn't getting blood to that region. Stroke countdown had begun. Kim's voice. "We've got 10 minutes before permanent damage." Rodriguez had to repair the tear in the vessel and extract the fragment. In 10 minutes, she'd done complex repairs before, but never with this much pressure, never with this patient, never with this history. "Timer," she said. "Start it." Webb's voice was calm but firm. Timer started. 10 minutes. Rodriguez's hands moved with speed that defied their precision. The fragment came out first, placed in a specimen tray with a metallic click. Specimen out. Now the artery. She used sutures finer than human hair, threading them through tissue you could see through. The microscope showed every detail. Every stitch had to be perfect. 7 minutes, Webb counted. First suture, tied off. 6 minutes. Second suture. 5 minutes. Third suture. Her hands were starting to cramp. She shook them out. Couldn't afford to shake during the next one. 4 minutes. Fourth suture. 3 minutes. Fifth suture. Almost there. 2 minutes. Sixth suture. The final one. Her vision tunneled. All that existed was the needle, the thread, the vessel. 1 minute. Tied off. Release the clip. Webb released it. Everyone held their breath. Blood flowed through the repaired vessel. The sutures held. No leak, no rupture. Clear. Artery intact. The collective exhale in the room was audible. Kim's voice. Blood pressure returning to normal. 110/70. He's stable. Rodriguez allowed herself one moment of weakness, slumped slightly, then straightened. Let's close. The next 6 hours were routine by comparison. Replacing the bone flap, closing the dura, suturing the scalp in layers. By 7 that evening, 14 hours after the first incision, the last stitch was placed. Rodriguez stepped back from the table. Her scrubs were soaked with sweat. Her back screamed. Her hands trembled now that precision was no longer required. Webb gripped her shoulder. You did it. We did it. She looked at Michael's face, peaceful under anesthesia, head wrapped in pristine white bandages, spoke to him quietly. Your father saved me. I saved you. We're even now. At 7:15, Rodriguez walked into the waiting room still in her scrubs, hair matted, face mask hanging around her neck, exhausted beyond words, but smiling. Sarah saw her, stood, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Rodriguez walked over, took Sarah's hands, let the smile speak first. He made it. Sarah collapsed into Rodriguez's arms, sobs tearing from somewhere deep. Emily wrapped her arms around both of them, crying freely. The bullet is out. The artery is repaired. He's alive. They sat together while Rodriguez explained the complications, the repair, the 14 hours of surgery. She showed them a photo on her phone, the bullet fragment in a specimen jar, rusty and jagged. Can we see him? Emily asked. Yes. Follow me. The ICU was quiet, dimmed for evening. Bed 7 held Michael Carter, intubated, monitors everywhere, bandages covering half his head. But his chest rose and fell, his heart beat. The monitors showed life. Sarah went to his side immediately, took his hand. You did it, Michael. You survived. Again. Emily stood on the other side. Welcome back, Dad. Rodriguez's voice was gentle. He'll be sedated for 24 to 48 hours. Then we'll lighten the sedation, see if he wakes up naturally. If? Sarah caught the word. We won't know if there's any neurological damage until he's awake. Brain surgery is. We do our best, but the brain is complex. He might wake up perfectly fine. Or there might be deficits. Speech, memory, movement. We won't know until we know. The words hung in the room like a sword. Michael was alive. But would he be Michael? Would he remember Sarah? Would he know Emily? Would the man who'd carried 48 years of secrets be able to tell them he'd survived? Day 13. Michael didn't wake. Rodriguez reduced the sedation medications at dawn, allowing his body to surface naturally from the chemical depths. Sarah and Emily kept vigil beside his bed, watching for any sign, a flutter of eyelids, a twitch of fingers, anything to indicate consciousness returning. Hours crawled past. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. The ventilator breathed for him. But Michael remained still, absent, locked somewhere inside himself. This is normal, Emily told her mother, her medical training providing words even as her heart doubted them. Sometimes it takes time for the brain to heal. But her face betrayed her worry. By afternoon, Rodriguez performed neurological assessments. She shined lights in Michael's eyes. Pupil response was sluggish, tested reflexes, present, but weak. Ran a pen along the sole of his foot. Minimal response, no spontaneous movement, no sign of waking. Sarah talked to him constantly, her voice hoarse from hours of one-sided conversation. "Michael, come back to me. You've fought this long. Please don't leave now." The only answer was the ventilator's mechanical sigh. That night, Sarah refused to leave despite Emily's urging. "I rested for 48 years while he carried that bullet. I can stay awake now." Emily brought coffee. Neither of them drank. It sat cooling on the bedside table, forgotten, as they watched Michael's chest rise and fall with borrowed breath. Day 14 brought complications. The nurse noticed it first during morning rounds. Michael's temperature had spiked to 102 degrees at 3 in the morning. Blood cultures were drawn. Rodriguez examined the surgical site, her face carefully neutral, but Sarah caught the tightness around her eyes. Redness surrounded the incision. The drainage had changed color, cloudy instead of clear. "Infection," Rodriguez said quietly. "Despite everything? How?" Emily's voice was sharp. "The antibiotics, the sterile technique. The bullet was in there for 48 years. Rust, bacteria, foreign material. Sometimes the body remembers contamination even after we remove the source." Rodriguez adjusted the IV settings. "We're increasing antibiotic coverage, broader spectrum. We'll watch it closely." By afternoon, Michael's fever had climbed to 103 degrees. Medications brought it down slightly, then it crept back up. A CT scan showed a small fluid collection at the surgical site, not large enough to drain surgically yet, but growing. Sarah stood at the window, watching rain streak the glass. Her reflection looked like a stranger, gray-faced, hollow-eyed, aged a decade in 2 weeks. "He's dying," she said flatly. "After everything, he's dying anyway." Emily moved to her mother's side. "He's fighting, Mom. His body is fighting. What if the fight is too much? What if 68 years of living, 48 of them carrying that bullet, what if it's just too much for one body to bear?" Emily had no answer. She was thinking the same thing. Rodriguez found them there as evening fell. She sat down with them in the small conference room, her exhaustion evident in every movement. "I'm not going to lie to you. This is serious." "How serious?" Sarah's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "If the infection doesn't resolve in 48 hours, we may need to go back in. Clean out the surgical site." "But he's not strong enough for another surgery." "I know." Rodriguez's voice was barely above a whisper. "That's why we're throwing everything we have at this infection now. Every antibiotic, every support measure. I didn't save him from the bullet to lose him to bacteria." The hospital bent more rules, brought cots into Michael's room. Sarah and Emily slept there, waking at every monitor alarm, every change in the ventilator's rhythm. Dawn of day 15 brought the crisis. Michael's fever hit 104 degrees. Then his left hand began twitching, small rhythmic movements, a focal seizure. Medication stopped it, but the implications were clear. The infection was affecting his brain directly, causing irritation, inflammation, damage. Dr. Howard Patterson, infectious disease specialist, examined Michael with grim efficiency. The infection likely originated from the bullet itself. 48 years of rust and contamination. We're on maximum antibiotic coverage. Now we wait and hope his immune system can mount an adequate response. "And if it can't?" Emily asked, though she already knew. Patterson's silence was answer enough. Emily walked into the hallway, slid down the wall, put her head in her hands. For the first time since this nightmare began, her professional composure shattered completely. She sobbed. For the father she'd rejected for 5 years, for the hero she'd mistaken for a liar, for time she'd wasted in anger instead of love. Sarah found her there, sat beside her daughter on the cold floor. "Tell me the truth. Medical truth." Emily lifted her head. "He might not make it." "I know. Then why did we do this? Why put him through surgery?" "Because he wanted to die free of the secret, free of the lie he'd carried." Sarah's voice was steady now, accepting. "If he dies now, at least he dies with the truth known." "That's not enough," Emily choked out. "I need him to live." "Me too, baby. Me too." Afternoon brought Sarah back to Michael's bedside. She took his unresponsive hand and prayed aloud, past caring who heard. "God, I haven't asked for much. I've accepted what life gave us. But I'm asking now. Please, don't take him. Not when we finally have truth. Not when our family is finally whole." Emily stood in the doorway, listening to her mother's prayer. Added her own silent plea, despite not believing in prayer, despite her medical training telling her that outcomes were determined by physiology, not providence. By evening, Michael's condition deteriorated further. Blood pressure dropping, heart rate climbing, temperature at 104.8 degrees. The monitor's alarms became constant companions. Rodriguez ran into the room. "He's going septic." The code team arrived with crash cart and urgency. Medications were pushed through IV lines. Ventilator settings were adjusted. Blood pressure medications to force his vessels to constrict, to push blood to vital organs. Sarah and Emily were pushed to the corner, watching their husband, their father, surrounded by 15 medical professionals in organized chaos. "Pressure's coming up," Kim called out. 85 over 45, 90 over 50, 95 over 55. Stabilizing, temporarily. But the crisis had revealed how close to the edge Michael teetered. By midnight, the immediate danger had passed, but Michael remained critical. The team dispersed, leaving only routine ICU staff. Rodriguez stayed, sitting in a chair, staring at her patient. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I thought I could save him." Sarah touched her shoulder. "You did everything. You did more than everything." It might not be enough. The 3 women sat together through the darkest hours. Sarah, Emily, Rodriguez, each carrying their own weight of love and debt and fear, none sleeping, just watching, waiting, 3 in the morning. The hour when most deaths occur, when the body's resources are at their lowest, when giving up seems easiest. Michael's monitor showed a heart rate of 65, blood pressure holding at 90 over 55, temperature still elevated at 103 degrees, the numbers of a man barely holding on. Sarah had her head on the bed, eyes closed in exhaustion. Emily had finally fallen asleep in the chair. Rodriguez was checking monitors when she saw it. Michael's right index finger moved, a tiny twitch, almost imperceptible. She watched, holding her breath. Again. The finger moved again. Then his eyelids fluttered. Just once, but definitely. "Michael?" Rodriguez leaned close. "Michael, can you hear me?" No response. But more movement, fingers on both hands, toes flexing under the blanket. "Sarah! Emily!" Rodriguez's voice was sharp. They jerked awake. What's wrong?" "He's responding. Look." Michael's eyelids fluttered again, open to slits, unfocused, confused, but open. He was waking up. 6 in the morning. Michael's eyes opened fully. Confusion clouded his features. He tried to speak but couldn't. The breathing tube still down his throat prevented words. Panic flashed across his face. Rodriguez was there immediately. "Michael, don't try to talk. You have a breathing tube. You're in Johns Hopkins Hospital. You had surgery. You're okay." His eyes searched frantically, landing on Sarah. Recognition sparked. Relief. His hand squeezed hers with surprising strength. Sarah's tears came in torrents. "You're awake." "Oh God, you're awake." Rodriguez called for the respiratory therapist. "Let's see if we can get that tube out." They conducted a breathing trial. Michael breathed over the ventilator easily, his lungs strong enough. "This will be uncomfortable but brief," Rodriguez warned. The tube slid out. Michael coughed violently, gasping, then breathing on his own. His first word was hoarse, barely audible. "Sarah? I'm here, baby." "I'm here." Rodriguez began her neurological examination with careful precision. "Squeeze my hands." Both hands squeezed equally. "Wiggle your toes." Both feet moved. "Follow my finger with your eyes." Perfect tracking. "What's your name?" "Michael." "Carter." "Where are you?" "Hospital? Baltimore?" "Who is this?" She pointed to Sarah. "My wife, Sarah." "And this?" "Emily." "My daughter, Emily." Emily broke down, laughing and crying simultaneously. "Dad, you remember. You remember everything." Michael looked confused. "Why wouldn't I?" Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. "You've been unconscious for 4 days. We weren't sure if the surgery caused any damage." Michael's hand moved tentatively to his head, feeling the bandages. The surgery, the bullet. Memory returned in waves. "Did you get it?" "Every piece." Hours later, after Michael had been assessed, after his fever had finally broken to 99.1 degrees, after the infection showed signs of retreating, Rodriguez returned with something small in her hand. "Would you like to see it?" she asked. "See what?" "What I took out of your head." She brought a clear specimen jar. Inside, suspended in preservative fluid, sat a jagged piece of rusted metal no larger than a thumbnail. 48 years it had lived inside Michael's skull. 48 years of secrets compressed into oxidized steel. Michael took the jar with shaking hands, stared at the fragment as if it were an artifact from another life. This object had defined him, had shaped every decision since March 1971, had nearly killed him twice, once going in, once refusing to leave. "I need to tell you everything," Michael said quietly. "Not pieces. Everything." Sarah started to protest. "You don't have to." "I do. Because when I die, and I will die someday, I want the truth to die with understanding, not mystery." Emily sat on one side of the bed, Sarah on the other. Rodriguez remained, sensing this story was hers to hear as well. Michael held the specimen jar like a talisman. His voice was rough but steady. "March 1971, Quang Tri Province. We were supposed to clear a village. Lieutenant Stevens said intelligence reported Viet Cong activity." He paused, gathering strength. "But I'd been there before, week earlier on patrol. It was families, kids playing, old people farming. No weapons, no soldiers, just life." Sarah's hand tightened on his. "I told Stevens what I'd seen. He didn't care. Said orders are orders. Intelligence says, VC, we clear VC." Michael's breathing grew labored. Emily adjusted his oxygen. "Morning of March 16th, we approached the village. I saw them, children running toward us, women holding babies. And Stevens ordered weapons hot." The room was silent except for the monitor's beeping. "I said no." 3 words that had cost him 48 years. Stevens pulled his sidearm, said I was refusing direct orders in a combat zone, threatened court-martial. I still said no. I couldn't shoot children. I couldn't. Michael's voice cracked. "He shot me. from behind, back of the head, left me bleeding in the grass, reported me as killed in action. Emily gasped. Your own officer? My own officer. I should have died. But a doctor from the village found me. Dr. Nguyen Tan Lin. Michael looked at Rodriguez. He was hiding with his family in a bomb shelter. Because I'd refused to fire, Stephen's unit retreated without engaging. Reported mission accomplished. Left me behind. Lin operated on me in that shelter, by candlelight, with tools not meant for surgery, got most of the bullet out, but one piece was too deep, near my brainstem. He said, "This will stay forever, a reminder that you chose life over death." His family hid me for 6 weeks while I healed, then got me to an American evacuation point. But I couldn't tell the truth. Stevens had already reported me KIA. If I came back saying what happened, they'd court-martial me for insubordination. Or worse, accessory to desertion, refusing lawful orders, a dozen charges. I could have spent my life in Leavenworth. So I lied. Said car accident stateside. Changed my records, started over. Met you, Sarah. Built a life. He looked at his wife. But I carried the guilt. Every single day. Guilt for lying to you. Guilt for not speaking up. For letting Stevens stay in command. Guilt for living when so many didn't. Sarah's voice was thick with tears. You saved 47 people. And lied to everyone I loved for 48 years. Emily spoke through her own tears. Dad, I found the discrepancy in your records during residency. I thought you were hiding cowardice, but you were hiding heroism. You chose court-martial over murder. It wasn't heroism, it was just, I couldn't kill children, that's all. That is heroism, Emily insisted. Rodriguez had been silent, but now she pulled out her phone. Michael, I need to show you something. She displayed a series of photographs. An old man in a white doctor's coat, the same man younger with a stethoscope, the same man very young standing in a village, the same man holding an infant. This is my father, Dr. Nguyen Tan Lin. Michael's face went white. That's Lin? Yes. And this baby is me, March 16th, 1971. My mother went into labor during the chaos when your platoon approached. I was born in that bomb shelter while the adults decided whether to run or hide. Rodriguez's voice trembled. You saved my parents. You saved me before I even took my first breath. Sarah's hand covered her mouth. After my father died 5 years ago, I found his papers, letters, memories. One letter was addressed to the soldier with the scarred hand. He never knew your name, but he described you perfectly. Rodriguez showed Michael the translated letter Sarah had already read. Michael read through blurring vision. 48 years of carrying shame, and the man he'd saved had carried gratitude. My father saved you then, Rodriguez said softly. I saved you now. He taught me to be a doctor because of what you did. He'd say, that soldier showed me what courage looks like. Every surgery I perform, every life I save, exists because you said no that day. I became a neurosurgeon specializing in war trauma because of his stories, because of you. And 48 years later, fate or karma or God brought you to me so I could finish what my father started. Michael's voice broke. All these years I thought I'd failed. That my choice cost me everything. It gave us life, Rodriguez said, and we gave you yours back. The list, Michael remembered suddenly. The 47 names. Rodriguez showed her phone again. My father kept the same list. These people survived because you refused. 3 are still alive, in California, Virginia, Oregon. They have children, grandchildren. 68 descendants from those 47 people. Michael couldn't speak. The mathematics of his one choice. Generations that wouldn't exist if he'd pulled the trigger. Rodriguez continued, "Welcome home, Michael. Finally, those are the words you should have heard in 1971. Welcome home." The words broke something inside him. 48 years of holding together, of carrying the weight alone, of never being acknowledged. He wept. Sarah held him. Emily held them both. Rodriguez stood with her hand on Michael's shoulder, 3 generations connected by one moment of conscience. "I'm sorry," Michael said to Sarah, "for lying, for all of it. You did what you had to survive, and you carried it alone for too long. I don't have to anymore. No, never again." To Emily, "Can you forgive me?" "Dad, there's nothing to forgive. You're a hero. I'm just a man who chose not to kill. That's what heroes do." Rodriguez opened a box. Inside was the bullet fragment in a display case, a Purple Heart medal she'd managed to have officially awarded, a letter from the Department of Defense correcting his military record, and a photograph of her father. On the back, in Vietnamese and English, "Thank you, soldier. Lien." Michael held the photograph. "I wish I could have told him thank you. He knew. He always knew. And he's watching now, proud that his daughter could repay the debt." The morning sun streamed through the hospital window. Michael Carter, 68 years old, finally free of the burden he'd carried since he was 20. Finally understood. Finally home. 6 months later, September 2020, Carter's Auto Repair reopened. The sign had been repainted. Carter Auto Repair. Father, daughter. Emily had left surgery, choosing to work alongside her father part-time. "I can save lives in an operating room," she told him, "but I wanted to save this with you." Michael smiled, health restored, hair growing back over the scar. "You already saved my life. Now we save carburetors." The local VFW chapter organized what Michael had never received, a welcome home ceremony. 50 Vietnam veterans gathered in the garage parking lot, American flags lining the entrance. Michael stood between Sarah and Emily, Rodriguez beside them after flying in from Baltimore. Rodriguez addressed the crowd, telling Michael's story with his permission. This man chose conscience over career, life over orders, truth over silence. He saved 47 people and paid with 48 years of secrecy. Today, we say what should have been said in 1971. The veterans responded as one, "Welcome home." They lined up to shake Michael's hand. An old soldier gripped it firmly. "Thank you for having the courage I didn't." The bullet fragment sat in a display case in the garage office, a plaque beneath it reading, "Courage isn't following orders, it's knowing when not to." Sunday dinner at the Carter house now included Rodriguez and her family. Cornbread steamed on the table. Sam Cooke played softly. Michael stood with raised glass. To family, to truth, to second chances. And to Lynn, who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. As they ate and laughed, the 2 photos on the wall told the story. Young Michael in uniform and new Michael surrounded by family. Beginning and redemption. Freedom isn't free, but sometimes the price is truth, and truth, no matter how long buried, always finds its way home. Michael Carter carried a secret for 48 years, not because he was ashamed of what he'd done, but because the world wasn't ready to understand. How many of us carry our own bullets? Not metal fragments in our skulls, but truths we've buried so deep we've almost convinced ourselves they don't matter anymore. The lie we told to protect someone we love, the choice we made that nobody understood. The wound we've hidden beneath decades of silence because speaking it aloud felt more dangerous than carrying it alone. Michael's story reminds us that our bodies keep score, that secrets have weight, and that sometimes the thing we've been running from is the very thing that needs to come out for healing to begin. He got his welcome home at 68. His daughter got her father back. His wife finally understood the man she'd loved for nearly half a century. It took a medical crisis to force the truth into the light, but once there, it set everyone free. What truth are you carrying that your family needs to hear before it's too late? Have you ever discovered something about a loved one that completely changed how you saw them? Share your story below. Someone needs to hear they're not alone.